Hello everyone. Hi, this is Rahul, your filmy Bania, and today we are yet again back with a new episode of Scholarly, the movie podcast which we do in association with Mr. M.K. Raghavendra, film historian and scholar. And today is a very interesting discussion because we're going to be talking about the portrayal of politics in Indian films, and we're going to also briefly chat about the controversial new show by Amazon called Tandav. And we have a very eminent panel today to discuss all of this. Mr. M.K. Raghavendra joins us from Bangalore, who's a movie historian, movie theorist, I would say, and a movie scholar who has more than 12 books published in his name by leading publishers such as OUP, Routledge, and Bloomsbury. And he has written extensively on Hindi cinema. And we're also privileged to have Shreya Narayan, a renowned actress and creative thinker. Hello, Shreya. She'll be giving her perspective. She has her own views on how politicians are portrayed in Bollywood films. So, and we'll be also joined shortly by Mr. Anshuman Jain, who's a movie producer himself and also an avid watcher of politics and cinema. So, what we'll do is we'll start our discussion. MK sir, would you like to just give a small brief, prologue to this entire thing of what is your view on how politicians are portrayed in cinema, and then we can ask Shreya and we can just bounce off questions.
Well, I think this new. I just watched this Tandav after you told me about it. I watched this thing.
Yeah,
it's like all Indian politics, films about Indian politics. It seems to be sort of takes from The Godfather in many ways. I don't know if for some reason it looks like your Hindi film, the popular film, seems to see, politics as an extension of gangsterdom in some way. I don't exactly know what is the reason. And of course, this is supposedly taken from this other one, House of Cards, right?
yeah.
Kevin Spacey's House of Cards, right? But the thing of Godfather is always looming over all this, including Rajniti, Prakash Jha's Rajniti. Is this thing of Godfather always looming over it? And it's interesting that even among, among these political films, even among gangster films, okay, it's only Godfather 1 which has been influenced. How many remakes have been of Godfather 1 in Indian languages, Tamil, Hindi, etc., right? Vito Corleone has been played by Amitabh Bachchan, he's been played by Kamala Hassan, he's been played by All and Sundry, right? The point, Godfather 2 never makes it. For some reason, Godfather 2 is of no influence at all on Indian cinema. And neither are Scorsese's gangster films. It's only Godfather 1. Okay, what is the reason for this? Okay, and the thing is, I did some thinking about it. Okay, the last couple of days I thought about it. You know what is the basic thing? Why Godfather is such an important thing? What is the basic difference between an Indian film and a Hollywood film, right? Hollywood films, people do things. What he does, doing, okay. Indian cinema, it is being, okay. It's a completely different thing, right? What you are more than what you do. So what in Godfather, okay. Like for example, let's take something like let me explain this. How would I look at this? Yeah. For example, powerful. You take something like powerful, right? So the question of the word powerful is the thing of being. Okay, you don't have to demonstrate your power. Rather, it's in fact Godfather 1. The important thing about Godfather 1 is he's already there. He's already there as a big shot, right? So the question is that it goes along with this Indian thing of rich people. Nobody knows how they became rich. Okay, they're all fabulously rich. We don't know how they became rich. Powerful people, we don't know how they became powerful. Okay. So the question is, whereas we look at something like Kevin Spacey's film, which is that House of Cards, there is not power so much, it's wily, it's maneuvering. How does he get around this? How does he get around at the procedure? It's not that Saif Ali Khan doesn't do anything, but the point is, it's completely implausible what he does. It doesn't even, who would kill his own father, who was Prime Minister, without having a backup plan, without coming in and having a plan by which he would get to the top? The only thing that seems to register with this guy is that it's aconite. It's aconite, okay? They go on talking, what is this aconite? Okay, it could very well have been cyanide. It could have been, what's so hot about aconite? Okay, I don't know what. I think it's, as far as I can make out, it's homeopathic medicine. Okay. This is what I got about Iconite. But the
Something to do
point
with
is this:
kryptonite?
kryptonite would be something else. Kryptonite is only for superhumans. Okay. Probably for Hrithik Roshan or
I'm
Salman
letting.
Khan, kind of thing. Okay. So this, but this thing is, this look. For example, let's look at Diwar. Let's look at this, shall we say, iconic film Diwar, right? Amitabh Bachchan, what does he do exactly in Diwar to get him to this position of power? What does he do? He locks up with some 20 goondas or after him and bashes all 20 of them and beats them to pulp, right? Now, the point is, it's completely implausible. There's no way that the point is, he is not demonstrating what this man does. He is demonstrating this word tough. Okay. So the plausibility does not work at all. There's no motivation. There is nothing. You get the point is you demonstrate this guy is powerful, this guy is wealthy, this guy is tough. So it's more a state of being. Whereas in a Hollywood movie, doing would be the key thing. So I think you look at this, like they don't even bother to be plausible. Why? What would motivate? What's his name? Saif in the film, in the TV series, to murder his own father as prime minister. How would he gain by it? He doesn't gain anything. He doesn't gain anything else at all. Okay. And then you've got this thing of intellectual. You've got one thing all sort of represented by JNU. Intellectual. You've got these things, professor, and it's like professors and politicians. They're all together all the time. They're on great terms. I don't know what JNU professor was allowed into the portals of the PMO's office. Who was ever allowed into the PMO's office? I don't know. Okay, are the student leaders so important? No, student leader because JNU makes news. You see in the newspaper. It counts for nothing as far as the elections are concerned. It makes news in the newspapers, right? Okay. So the question is that glamour. The thing is, it's a glamour thing. Okay, it's a glamorous thing. JNU is glamorous. Politics is glamorous. Okay. So the question is again, the thing of using power is glamorous. Actually, look at one more thing I thought of. You look at politics. Politics is a realm in India where all kinds of castes, all kinds of social types, all kinds of different hierarchical categories rub shoulders with each other, right? You have all kinds of people, Dalits, this, that, tribals, all of them rub shoulders. Why is it that in this particular film, they choose a certain upper caste, upper class social type to represent politicians? Why should that be the case? Whereas you go to policemen, they pick what's it called, another category altogether, more lumpen proletariat kinds to play policemen. Okay, you've got the other categories are well represented by racial types, social types, racial types, okay, economic types, okay, but not politicians. Somehow that glamour, like there has to be Godfather. In fact, when I saw the Godfather for the first time, I had some problems with it because the film glamorizes the gangster, right? Has this bit of glamour in it. I mean, it's okay. I think it's a great film, but the point is that element of glamour is there, which has gone very well with the Indian thing of glamour, of political person glamour, the powerful with glamour, money and glamour, all these things go together. Okay, that is generally what I wanted to say, but we can carry this on later. Yeah.
Okay. So Shreya, just going to you, what is your view? You have been in the industry for more than 10 years. You have acted in various films. Now, what is your view when it comes to, as we were just speaking a few moments ago, Shreya had mentioned, it's very important to note what kind of people are writing these characters whom we see. So, what is your view? How are Indian politicians portrayed in films and why are they portrayed so?
So first, on the onset, let me tell you that I have not watched stand-up. So I've been away from all the Indian content for some time, especially during COVID times, because I wanted to keep myself in a very happy mood. I wanted my mind to be in a great, fresh place, which is not the case with Indian content. Most of it is picked up, it's already made somewhere and adapted, as Sir has already said, and rightly so. So you don't feel you're watching something new or it's just that if it's made in Israel, it is now being adapted in the Indian milieu. Or if it's made in Italy or Hollywood, it's adapted in the Indian milieu. Nothing else changes. So you know that what's coming. So the charm is veered off. And one of the things which served very beautifully, he said right now, that while in Indian politics, if you see politics of UP, Bihar, etc., every leader we have had for last 30, 40 years, and and every leader we have had since 90s, whether it is UP or Bihar or the top or biggest states in the north, they all are, and they are chosen by people because they are of the same caste. So what people do not realize is that the common man is not bothered about work done. He is bothered about whether that leader is from my caste or not. So the problem with film industry is you cannot point fingers to the common man. You are begging the common man to come watch your film. So whom do you point fingers at? You cannot point. See, again, when Sir said that somehow, there are no Dalits, there are no Dalit leaders, or there are no Dalit politicians, because now the writer who's writing it doesn't want to point fingers at Dalits. So he's choosing his narrative very smartly. I can point fingers at upper class. I can point fingers at right-wing leaders. I can point fingers at certain class, but I must not touch the intelligentsia. I must not touch the Dalits. I must not. So this is a particular way, and then we'll have to see who the writer is. It's very important who the writer is always. In Indian content, whatever is made, politicians are just straight, they're just easy targets. But people forget that those politicians you are pointing fingers are chosen by the common person. He's chosen by the people you are begging them to come and watch your film. They're chosen by them. And then even if you are pointing fingers at the prime minister, those chosen representatives are choosing that. So who are you pointing fingers at? At those chosen by the people. But they are the same people you need money from for your tickets. So now you cannot point fingers at them. So this is like a very, very interesting thing. So nowadays, whenever I see that somebody has written something or is trying to say something or make a political statement, I always try to see that what is there, like who is writing it. That actually says so much. And there's a new trend of putting JNU everywhere. I mean, I feel bad for them. It's just that they are in the news, so they just. Yeah, they are in the news, so they find it very. But frankly, I come from a family of politicians. I have my 4 generations in politics. I have my uncles and aunts, and they all are MLAs, MPs. And I can tell you that one of the biggest problems, if I want to fight an election tomorrow, I cannot till I have. If I want to fight for MLA, I must have 50 lakh rupees. If I want to fight for MP, I must have 1 crore rupees. If I don't have it, the general public is not even going to know that I'm standing for elections. The party is not going to give me a ticket. Why? Because it takes that amount of money to even fight an election. So when it takes that amount of money to fight an election, you are expecting a politician to lose money every time he stands. And then he'll never get paid that money, right? He's not going to get paid that money. So when we talk about corrupt politicians, what happens in the West? For example, the same thing happened during Hillary Clinton and Trump administration. They were saying, "Oh, clean the swamp" and all that, because the big, the hedge funds were paying these people, like they were taking money for the elections from hedge funds. So obviously nobody is going to give you money for free, right? If you take money from Wall Street, you will have to work for them. And that's the way it has been going on. So the corruption is at that, it is at the highest level. It is at the top level. You just cannot remove corruption because you need money to reach people. You need money to fight elections, right? But in India, the problem becomes that even the smallest politician, if he gives tender to pass to make a drainage, he takes cut from that also. If he and not only him, his peon will also take a cut. Like if I want that a bridge is made, right? We'll keep on begging, let the file pass. The peon wants a cut. Everybody wants a cut. So common man is having an experience, and common man is thinking, why am I going through this? Hello, common man, you are going through this because you are choosing a leader of your caste. You're not interested in work. So again and again, the content, whoever is writing the content is not, he's not aware of how the system works. He's not aware of both sides. He just is an angry person.
Fair
Because
enough.
Indian cinema has always been making angry young man films. That's what has succeeded. So they're still on the path. They don't know the insides outs of how it works. Their content is totally picked up from outside, and it's not inspiring. So if you ask me, I've not even come to the actress bit right now. I've just stayed in the political
Well,
bit.
just to take a cue from what Shreya is trying to say, I mean, I'm just looking at, so this Solanki chap has written Tandav. Now, he has written Article 13, 15, I forgot the full name, of Ayushman Khurrana. That's a very scathing commentary on the classes system in UP. But he seems to lose his entire grip over realism in a movie like, in a TV show like Tandav. I mean, we have Range Rover, six-pack toting PM candidates. We have hot Casanova-looking JNU professor. We have a henchman for the son of a prime minister, a sitting prime minister. We have absurd, surreal scenes wherein the main hero of the show, Saif Ali Khan, is drinking mad next to the dead body of a sitting prime minister with nobody there. I mean, it usually shouldn't happen. I mean, in the real world. So what I'm saying is, even if the writers are very intelligent, so Solanki had written a decent script at Article 15. I won't call it like over the top or I won't call it like it's the Hail Mary pass Oscar level, but it was a decent one-time effort what he did. But he just seems to lose it all when it comes to these big magnum opuses.
No, but I yes.
MK,
So
Please, Shreya, please go ahead. You saying something?
No,
So please go on. I'll speak
Okay,
after
no,
you.
my point is the Article 15 is based on a generic genre formula, which is about the public as seen from a newspaper thing, right? We don't know exactly what is happening. And the film does not need to do anything more than just present a mystery and gradually go into that. Here the genre is something else. It's trying to get into the, what's it called, bedrooms of the politicians and tell us all the stuff which is happening inside, right? And they don't know. See, there the fact that they don't know comes to the rescue. Here, the fact that they don't know works against them. Okay, so it's a completely different thing. Okay, it's very easy. Look, I'll tell you, it's easy to put into the film the same mystery that we feel about the goings on in Uttar Pradesh. Okay, what's happening that we don't know. So we turn our own ignorance of the situation into a mystery, right? You get my point, right? You turn it into a mystery and you make a mystery film in which this fellow gradually discovers this, discovers that without really uncovering everything. That works. That's realistic, okay? Because that's exactly the way the ordinary citizen feels when he looks at events like that. But here, the ordinary citizen doesn't know what the bedroom of prime minister is like, right? So the question is, when you get your camera in there and you make him do all kinds of things, okay? You have to rely completely on your imagination, okay? There is nothing there, yeah, completely on your imagination. You can't do any kind of realistic stuff there, okay? Because it's completely, nobody knows. And at the same time, you have to tell people what is there. So that is the basic thing.
But that's where I think, Shreya, the point to remember is that, okay, Tandav is one, Rajniti was one. So what has happened is I rarely see that they have a strategic, complete view of politics. Usually the story of politics will be centered towards these 3-4 people who are running the story. But politics in reality is very different. It's basically about, so for example, now who's the opposition in this entire show? I don't even know. Is there a visible opposition to the prime minister? I mean, we are having an assassination of a prime minister. There is zero opposition. There is a student leader like Kanhaiya Kumar, who's apparently the so-called torchbearer of opposition. So who is ruling India other than this party, which is Tigmanshu Dhulia's and this Saif Ali Khan's party? Who are these people? Because I'm at a loss of words that if you were to look at the visible opposition, you are in a democracy. I mean, baki log kaun hai? Who are the rest of the stakeholders? You don't know.
I actually sympathize with the writer because, a lot of times, I mean, since I've also produced a film, what I've seen, and since I'm an actor, let me tell you, actors are not cast because they suit a role. Okay, it's very simple. You have to take some stars, right? And all this talent, valid, nothing. You're putting on a project. Okay, so when you said that, certain people are cast in roles that they don't suit, right? So the writer may have written in good, in earnest and in good faith, but by the time it reaches the producer wants to cast this person, whether that person suits the role or not. But the director, producer think that this will make a good project. Dimple Kapadia, Saif Ali Khan, this, that, these people should be there. And as you said, a dashing student leader, this, that. So everybody wants the six packs. Everybody wants no leader you will find otherwise in politics having any six packs or whatever. But they want to cast certain looks, certain whatever, because that makes for a good project. So I think that you're giving a lot of credence. I mean, with due respect to everyone who studies Indian cinema, as a I mean, there's absolutely this much thought just doesn't go into making a film. The films in India are made very simply. This hero is ready to work with the director. The director must go and find a script. If there is a writer who has a script and the hero wants that kind of a script, the director will go with that script to the hero, and that's it. The hero will say, oh, I like it. I like myself in this kind of a swashbuckling role, or oh, I get to kill my father, or I get to whatever. If this appeals to the hero, that's it. The project is ready. The fact that we are studying so much, or even discussing that, as if they're saying something really, they just don't put that kind of thing. And poor writer, I mean, he must have written something else. I'm telling you, 100% he wrote something else, and it became something else. So, but he must get his credit. So it always happens that the script at the script level is very different from what actually comes out, especially in India, because we don't give so much of credence to the writers and content. Like we want a ready-made project which appeals to the hero or the actor. 4-5 actors are ready to work in the project. The director is well known, and that's it. I mean, that's how projects are made. So when you talk about the film that he's written, in that, he's going to I think it was made by Anubhav Sinha. Was it?
Yeah, Anubhav Sinha. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's going to he's making a small budget film with a director who wants to prove himself. So there is more earnestness, there's more honesty in it. But here suddenly you have very big people in the project. Once very big stars come into the project, people don't bother with little bits, and like then you have to pander to everybody.
I mean, MK sir, what Shreya is trying to say, there is a very scientific reason why nuance doesn't exist and realism doesn't exist when it comes to portrayal of politicians in Indian films. Now, just tell us about how, like you are based out of Bangalore, you are in South India for such a long time. What is your view of Southern cinema? How does Southern cinema look at politicians' portrayal in movies?
It's very different at all. I don't think it's very different. See, one of the things is Southern cinema will not look at national level politicians.
Okay.
See, one of the things is that national level politics is more glamorous in many ways than the local politics, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but generally the politician in South Indian cinema, I have not seen so many in the recent past, would naturally be a wicked figure. Okay, you wouldn't normally have at least in Kannada I can't recall a film where a politician is the protagonist. I haven't seen one for a long time. I don't remember when was the last film. I think it's this thing of central politics has a certain because has a certain glamour. So I think it's local politics doesn't matter very much. This is my sense of they are there, but I think by and large as villains. I'd be happy to be corrected, but I'm not too sure about this, right? But I think it doesn't pack the same glamour. This is my sense of it, which is why you don't have politician protagonists in. They're usually somewhat wicked, dark kind of category. That is my sense. But there's another point I wanted to make about this thing about you take the American House of Cards, right? The House of Cards, the entire thing is about a man maneuvering his way within a certain party, within a single party. Okay, because it's a stable system with a two-party system. if you maneuver your way to the top of a single party, you'll somehow get a chance to have a shot at the presidency. This is basically it. In India, it is not the case. It's no not that kind of stable system at all. Okay, what Shreya said, the thing is about voting for their own Jat Walas is absolutely correct. That's the way it works. And my own thing is, that my own sense is that the Jati representative is some kind of, retail stockist for a consumer product. Okay, he gets in. He gets in the votes, okay. He stocks, what is it called, soap over certain Life Boy. He's got Life Boy like that. He delivers. He can sell, say, 10,000 Life Boy a month or so. This guy can deliver 10,000 votes, and it'll all be from his stuff. And you saw one more thing there. An interesting thing here is that people take money for votes. They can be trusted to vote for whoever they've taken money from. Why is that the case? Why don't people, take the money and not vote for whoever they want? They take the money and vote for whoever they like. Why don't they do that? Because, there's this middleman who is actually channelizing the votes in some way, taking money, some kind of wholesaler or retailer or whatever, who's actually taking money from somewhere, and he is paying. Okay. He is actually paying. He's the person who's actually dealing with it. So if my Jati, if I vote my Jati and my intermediary who is actually connected to some political party pays me, if I don't vote for the person whom Bismil asks me to vote for, I'm actually not cheating the political party, which is a faceless entity. I'm cheating this fellow who is known to me, my relative or my Jatwala, right? That is why, by and large, you can say that people can be trusted to vote for money. Okay, they will not take the money and vote for who they want to vote for. Okay, so that it's very reliable. It's a reliable system. Okay, they are a committed, clientele of some sort. This is the way I see it. I mean, since Shreya seems to have some more knowledge of politics, can you? If you think this, what I'm saying is speculative, but you think there is any sense in it?
Yes, actually, I don't feel that in the UP and Bihar you even need to pay any money. They are so obsessed with caste system, they will just vote for their own caste. 30 years, that caste guy will make them, everybody is left Bihar, as you know, they must be in Bangalore working as laborers. They are in Kanyakumari, Kerala, Kashmir, working as laborers. They're all they want is fulfillment of self-esteem. They don't want anything for themselves. They'll go and work anywhere else. But my man is sitting on, he's the leader, because for thousands of years they have been suppressed and their self-esteem has been hurt. So today all they want is fulfillment of that self-esteem. This was going on for last 30 years, but now this thing is changing. Now with coming in of internet and internet being on everybody's phone, people can see what development looks like, what wearing good clothes look like, what going to a mall and eating KFC looks like. Everybody wants to do that, whatever be the caste. So suddenly these leaders, they are finding it. Nitish Kumar's seat was literally going this time. If BJP was not his partner, he would have lost it after, so things are being challenged now. For the first time, out of Mayawati and we had Mr. Yadav there and Mayawati there in UP. For the first time, we have some other person coming in who is an upper caste guy. Why? Because people have gotten aspirations at last, thanks to World Wide Web. So they can see how people live all over the world and how much stuff is going on. In the South, I feel that it is very difficult to, like how in North we keep on making villains out of politicians. You cannot do the same thing in South. They are gods. I mean, if Jayalalitha is the chief minister, you literally pray to her, you bow to her. If a film star becomes a politician or whatever, they make a temple for him. So if you make a film or you make a content in which you show them in a negative light, they will come and break your house. So no filmmaker is going to dare to make something, in which they'll portray them in a negative sense, because like Rajnikant or Kamal Hassan or any big actor you see, they are the demigods, and these are the people who actually graduate to become politicians. Whether it was, Jayalalitha, NTR, MGR, everybody. I mean, it's like you cannot mess with stuff out there. It's only in the north where we are like, ये तो politician है, इसको किसी भी तरह से treat करो. So this we can only do in the north.
Well,
I don't think that you can.
For that matter, even if you look at Hollywood's history with politics, it has been.
Yeah. So you could take up the next point also.
Hello. Yes. Hi, guys. This is the second part of our discussion, and this is Rahul, your filmy Banya. We also have Anshuman Jain joining Shreya and MK Sir and me. And we're talking about Tandav and the portrayal of politicians in Indian films. Anshuman, would you like to make a quick statement about this, about why are politicians portrayed in a stereotypical fashion when it comes to Indian films? Why do they lack nuance?
Right. Hello, everyone. As we were discussing, I think the point was raised earlier about writing and how writers pick up stuff from real life and they put it on screen. And cinema is, after all, a mirror of our society. So when we see politicians throwing chairs at each other, and we see lack of development, and we hear stories of corruption, and that's what the writer perhaps picks up and then tries to bring it to the screen. So that is one aspect of a poor portrayal of the politician in Indian cinema, Indian TV. Either we stereotype him completely, as we do other characters, a villain, a hero, a comedian. So politician is now the villain almost always. And then the other aspect is that they need someone to, in a standard cinema formula, that a good guy and a bad guy, and so the politicians come out as the bad guys. But the issue of lack of nuance is also there, I guess, coming back to writing, because they want to have a formulaic system of good and bad. So they don't want to go into the details of how a politician works, how politics in India works. It's not a black and white job. There are caste issues. There are other factors at play. And that maybe they don't want to spend so much time at that, because end of the day, they just want to entertain people. And it all goes back to maybe the 70s, when the angry young man phenomena came in. Politics is a bad word, and the emergency came in. And then from there on, I guess, in Indian cinema or TV, politician became a bad word, a dirty word, even in society in general. So what we see around us is we see on screen, which is sad in a way, because there are all kinds of people. Politics is not, again, black and white. Politicians are not all bad and good and bad. So perhaps we could learn from, and then the scare of being right. Chances are that they'll get back to you, as is happening these days. So I think politician Bechara is now a victim of all these factors on cinema.
Fantastic. I think, MK sir, what both Shreya and Anshuman have been pointing out, that there are a lot of reasons which have to do not generally with politics, but it's a combination of commerce when it comes to movies, how they will sell, and societal perceptions about politicians as such, which contribute in writing to of a character. So I can talk about some great Indian films on politics as well. There have been a lot of trouble when you see like a corrupt politician in Dabangg with Salman Khan. You can talk of so many people who are here and there, and you can talk of pompous politicians all the while. But I can also talk of a movie like Andhi, which was about Indira Gandhi and her life. Very subtle, very beautifully crafted movie for its time. And even then, after that, even if you look at even a movie like Rajniti was decent in terms of basic story execution and how characters were, although I was not in favor of having Katrina Kaif as a Priyanka Gandhi lookalike, but still they have their reasons to do that. But even then, after that, if you look at, there have been satires on politics, including this TV show of Zakir Khan, which comes on Amazon, called Hamare Chacha Vidhayak Hain, which is again talking about a small village, how it portrays itself. And there is this TVF show called Panchayat, which also talks of, I won't say politics as such, but administration at a very micro level in small villages in India. So I think we are getting there. But MK sir, what do you think, why this whole thing needs to evolve now?
Yeah, I tell you, I think there is I don't know if this answers your question in any way. See, the thing is, the state, okay, is different from the government, elected government. Okay. What is happening like in Indian cinema, by and large, the state was represented by the police and the judiciary, right? That's the authority of the state. Now, by and large, in a country like America, when you go, the state is stable, regardless who comes or who doesn't come. The water will be supplied to houses, electricity will be available. This is that. So the question is, policy decisions are taken by the elected government. Okay, long-term policy decisions, but the actual delivery of services is the state, right? Now, in Indian cinema, okay, after 1992-93, after this liberalization, the state came into disrepute for some, or rather, the state came to disrepute earlier in the 80s. It said they have corrupt policemen. But 1992-93, as if the state wasn't necessary at all. So they started talking about privatization. So the question is that you have no policemen at all in 90s cinema until, except in something like, which is that Ram Gopal Varma. What is it? Ram Gopal Varma's film?
Yes, yes.
He made Sarkar and all these films.
No, the first
Satya.
one, Satya. Okay. Satya, there's a police thing, but the police there behave like private agencies, almost like gangsters themselves. They are powerful because they break the law. Okay. It is not that they are upholding the law, they are breaking the law, and that makes them powerful. That is Satya. So by and large, you can talk about 90s as the time when the state withdrew from its own, when the government withdrew, the state withdrew from its own institutions, and its own institutions start behaving like private interests. That is the way it was, right? So this is the thing. Now the question is, when you look at the new thing, you can look at, for example, you look at the kind of, like demonetization, you look at the kind of strength given. The state is strong today in some sense. It is stronger today than it was. Though of course it's being used probably in a partisan way, but the point is it's fairly strong. And that is being represented by this Ajay Devgan as a policeman, right? After decades almost, there's an honest policeman in Ajay Devgan, right? Okay, he suddenly come out of nowhere as and you can be surprised by this. But the point is, his primary enemies are politicians.
Yeah.
Okay. The politicians. Right. Okay. His
primary he works under them.
The point is, politics is weakening the state, kind of thing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the practice of politics is weakening the state. I mean, what is the state? The state should not undergo, the delivery of services, for example, law and order. By ideal state, the law and order arresting criminals should not be only criminals of one ideology, right? It should not be, that should not be the case. Now we don't know exactly what the criminals are being arrested. We can't be sure that it's not non-partisan. But the point is this, that in cinema, it seems to be that politics, I tell you this, whatever you may say, I don't think Indian cinema is realistic, but it seems to generally reflect what the public believes. Okay. And if there is and the fact that the state is powerful, that the state is honest today, there is some sense of the state being honest today through the Ajay Devgan thing, comes because the strengthening of the state, for example, black money can be traced, okay. The income tax department can trace money trails. So it's definitely more powerful than it was, say, 10 years ago. More powerful. So this Ajay Devgan is the character who's come there. But why politicians are seen as hampering the workings of the state? That is the question which is in it. Probably it is that the state is being made powerful, but the politicians can't be trusted to keep the state working or some such thing. What do you think?
But it's absolutely correct, isn't it? It's there everywhere. We can see that's happening. And you look at Sushant Singh Rajput case only. An investigation started. Firstly, it was not happening. An investigation started, and then it was totally suppressed and totally done away with because a lot of politicians and their names were coming up, etc., etc. Powerful people. See, in India, when you're seeing every day that justice is not served, okay, justice will be served if judiciary could work or policemen could work, which you are calling a state, right? Yeah, if they could work, justice would be served. But because people who are powerful do not let them work, therefore justice is not served. and therefore it's something which I as a common citizen believe that happens. I mean, it's there, it's inside my head that in India justice is not served, that there is no accountability in India and justice is not served. So who takes the decisions for that? Politicians do. So I as a common citizen, I believe that is happening, and so to represent it in cinema is absolutely fine. The problem is that I mean, in India, anybody who the problem in India is that resources are not available to everyone. Resources are very little. Everybody is fighting for the same resources, and therefore only powerful get that resource. They get their hands over that resource. So anybody who is in power, who's really powerful, whether he's a politician, today you'll be speaking against Mukesh Ambani and all that, because everybody is speaking up, because anybody who gets a lot of power in their hands and they're powerful, India is going to, point fingers that this person is corrupt because we don't have resources. We don't have resources, and there's limited resources, and some people get so much of resource and somebody has nothing. So that extremity of it decides who the villain will be. And so in cinema, we have decided the villain will be anyone who has the maximum resource. The politician will be the villain, or the other person who is a big industrialist, he will be the villain.
No, but Shreya, what you are saying is universal. I mean, this is how people who have power are treated across the world. Why just blame India for that? I mean, I personally feel there is...
No, I don't feel that. I totally disagree. I feel that, US actually respected its politicians and presidents, because they saw in 300, 400 years from the time Columbus reached US, and to the time depression came in 1929, US was top power. Second World War, it was top power. This whole time, it has been the superpower. So when you see development around you, when you see those skyscrapers, you believe that someone worked for me and made it happen. So obviously, you have respect for those people who made it happen. But in India, we never saw anything. In 70 years, we are like, when will that thing happen?
One more thing about American cinema. I want to make a point here. American cinema never does the dirty on the police. Like they're never on the judiciary. You won't find a corrupt judge. In the sense, if he's corrupt, he dies or some such thing, or he'll be replaced by some better guy. If he's a policeman, he's an exception. He's a crook, but he's exception. The other thing will be triumph of the good policeman. It's only in India that is not the case. Decades you've been going on with the police is absolutely corrupt, right?
But that's because we're seeing it every day, and I totally believe it's there. We're seeing it every day. They can't do anything.
I think there is disrespect for the state. There's disrespect.
Okay? Absolutely.
Don't respect the state. Okay, I think there's disrespect for the state. And with all our patriotic things, we do not see. We do not see. For example, just look at it. We are very distant from the military. We have no dealings with the military, right? The military has become heroic today, right? The military is heroic, but the police are not. Whereas police, we're supposed to deal with them day to day. But the point is, we have no respect for the police in cinema, right? And the police is never respected.
Yes, also because politicians cannot twist the army the way they use police on a daily basis. They just cannot. I mean, there is there are things in the constitution to protect them.
My own explanation is, if the Indian public, wants to connect, at least the audience of the thing, wants to connect directly with the nation without the intermediary of the state. Right? Like, for example, what is this Pan Singh Tomar? You take Pan Singh Tomar, right?
Yes.
Pan Singh Tomar, the staff is corrupt, who the IAS officer is a worthless fellow, the policemen are worthless fellows, everybody is worthless to people. But the nation is great. Winning a thing for the nation is great. So the question is, everybody wants to connect directly with the nation without the state in attendance. So then some movies, like, for example, you take something like, what is this guy's name? Mani Ratnam's thing with about Guru. Take Guru. Guru. Take Guru. It looks like the shareholders of the company are the general public. The shareholders are not the general public. They do not what he does for the shareholder cannot be taken as doing for the people. That's not the same thing. The shareholder is invested in his company and his company alone. What you do for your own shareholders is not like doing things for the public, right?
Anshuman, what's your view on this?
So I guess it all comes back to what we said earlier. We are mirroring the films, TV is mirroring the society. It all comes back to corruption, lack of development. The example is American state, American police, American development has been super over the last century or so. And that's what we see perhaps on screen there. And what we don't see in India, or what we see in India, is what we see on the street. So that's the direct connect, I guess, on cinema and between cinema and politicians and the state in general. And the politician remains the victim. But I think, as Rahul said, it has to evolve because not everyone is black or bad, and there are people doing some good work. So that nuance has to be there, I guess. Unlike a Tandav or a Mirzapur or something, they must get more wider view perspective on politics.
See, Anshuman, what I was saying was, like Shreya was saying, that America doesn't really demonize its politicians. But I would say one of the most seminal films in Hollywood is Jimmy Stewart's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which is one of the early, I'm talking about 1940s when this movie was made. See, you had the Watergate scandal. You have had the Cuban Missile Crisis. You have had McCarthyism. You have Chappaquiddick, the Kennedy assassination, the Cold War. So a lot of stuff happened. And, you had a president impeached, like Richard Nixon was impeached. Trump, in a way, was impeached in elections or whatever he has done. But largely, yes, you're right. There is a faith in the system because of a very scientific reason, what I feel, because I've lived in the US for quite some time and I've seen a large amount of tax return of people is taken by the government. So if you look at India, India is roughly around 6-7% taxpayers. Now, America number is much, much higher. So when you become an actual stakeholder in the development, when you're paying taxes, so there is a spiritual connect to what is going on with the politicians. Like I still believe that Americans have a very strong political system on the ground on a granular level. When you talk about counties, small towns, when this whole thing was going on in January that they will, rig the election, but somehow it didn't happen because some systems were strong in Atlanta, in the states of Florida. You could see Texas, turning around. And I think that is the reason that the citizens are bigger stakeholders in the US than they are in India, because it is my belief when you pay tax, you become a stakeholder. I think that's...
You are totally correct. Almost 43% of people in United States pay taxes, income tax I'm talking about. And do you know how many people in India pay income tax? 1%. 1.2% of India pays income tax. The only tax no, not at all. Check the statistics. And only people who pay taxes are on sales tax. So sales tax is not income tax. I am not earning and paying taxes. Only 1.2%. They have tried and increased it in last few years to 2%, but it's not going there. So so everybody's sitting, earning, eating. It's so easy to keep on pointing fingers at others because they're not paying. They don't. But they say, but we pay tax because we are paying tax on biscuits and goods and whatever.
Indirect taxes.
Yeah, but you are paying indirect taxes. We are paying income tax, direct taxes. We earn and we pay. And I'm talking about direct taxation, which what you're talking about. So people are very invested in the process, in their politicians using money that way in US.
Like, for example, if you see that Indian politicians always have been, what Raghavendra sir was saying, was that Indian politicians are actually looked upon as not exactly as the state, So what it means essentially is that the state apparatus has to be much bigger than the mystique of a politician, basically. So you see them in action when you have
they misuse it.
They are the spoilers.
They misuse it totally. They are misusing the state, the politicians.
Yeah.
So we know that.
Well, we have some good news of the day is that our Prime Minister has just got vaccinated in the morning. And,
finally, yes.
Thank you so much.
And the Indian vaccine, not the British
vaccine.
vaccine.
I also wanted to add one thing. There's a lot of Indian politicians are shown in all these films. You'll see in some sexual, doing some sexual wheeling dealing all the time. Now I want to just say that this is in the psyche of India. Sorry, sex is in the psyche of India, and writers, especially if you are in the film industry, you are seeing that happening in your milieu every day. I want to point fingers at people in the film industry, dude. When you put those kind of scenes for others, think what you're doing there in the film industry. You're creating such a dirty atmosphere in the film industry. You've made film industry so dirty for last 70 years, whatever you've done with women, I don't know. But that is what you...
Correct that Indian writers use sex and politicians as a toolkit. That's the new word.
Because they're seeing it all around them, you know, because they're seeing it all around them.
One of the sexes in Indian thing is associated with glamour, no? Like James Bond, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a very glamorous.
Glamour.
Okay, yeah. It should be the powerful spend their money and they spend their power, what's it called, seducing young women and that kind of thing. Yeah, that sort of thing. Okay. Men are the ones. Okay. So this is the kind of thing they keep doing all the time, right? So it's basically what does power fetch you? Okay, it makes you desirable, right? So the fundamental thing, money and power are more than good looks.
Yeah, they will get you the women.
Right? Yeah. So I think it's that glamour associated with power, with money, you know. Okay. It's not that you're buying it, but the point is when you have power, when you have money, it makes you desirable in a certain way, which ordinary people without power or without money, okay, don't have. If you look, for example, I don't know if you come across this, the sexiest men in India, I've come across this sort of thing. The sexiest men in India will all be powerful people, wealthy people, okay?
Yeah.
They will not be, they will have to be wealthy and they'll have to be, okay? They'll have to be cricketers, not hockey players, okay?
That is true.
That is 100% true.
Yeah, okay.
But anyways, the sexiest man, they do that people's sexiest man alive. It's always the top hero, the hero who's doing really well, or somebody who's doing
who's known to have got lots of money. Okay,
yeah, lots of money, doing great in their career.
So that is the way it works. That is the way these things work. Okay. So I mean, yeah, but it's the way of like by showing them to be desirable. I mean, like they don't coerce women. All these people, I'll say this much: that politicians in these movies don't coerce women into sexual situations. It comes to them naturally. That's one thing, movies I'm talking about. It comes to them naturally, right? When was the last time you saw, for example, in Tandav, is there a scene where a woman is coerced into sexual thing by a politician?
No, it's shown that women like honeypots, so women like to go to
consensual. It's always consensual, right? Whereas in everyday situation, it's not so consensual, right?
If I might add, there is this problem of Indian writers in films. They will either totally underestimate or minimize a woman character, totally like she's invisible, or she becomes so powerful, the rest of the story just falls into the right hand side. So there is no strategic balance of how. So I've never seen an Indian politician woman earning her laurels from scratch, going all the way up. It'll be because she has some largesse of her family. It'll be largesse because she's someone's wife, because she's someone's lover. Like even in Tandav, you have Dimple Kapadia vying for the prime minister's position only on the basis that she is this extramarital lover of the current sitting prime minister. But that's really dumb. I mean, you are dumb enough to assume that just because somebody is somebody's lover or live-in relationship partner, he or she has learned the entire tact of running a country. I mean, it doesn't work like that, usually.
And blackmail. What is this blackmail?
But have we not seen just that in India? I mean, if you see in India, what is the history of politicians? We have just seen those women make it, whether in the subcontinent. I will not even go to India. I'll say whether it's India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, they all are their father's daughters or wives or husband, or daughters. So they have never, nobody has been able to come up in India. Nobody has been able to come up on their own. Everybody has to come from certain family, and that family has pushed them, or their fathers have made them whatever. So that is the thing we are driving.
Here's the point. Now, this is what again perception is. Now, Mamata Banerjee, if you look at her, she's part of Congress and all. She's the only
family background
opposition.
She is the new India. She is the new. I'm 100% sure Bollywood would have made a film on her by now if she did not scream so much, because they want let me tell you, they want the woman to be attractive also. That is the problem with Bollywood. That they will not just portray a woman, they just want her to be
Attractive
sex slave
women.
also.
No,
Attractive women.
But my point is, if you look at,
She's attractive, but as a woman, I feel she's
I'm just
attractive.
saying
But
how
as a
the
man,
actually runs it,
men
it's
don't
really
feel
sad.
so.
It is really sad, Shreya, Anshuman, and MK sir, is that when you see, like for example, Mahua Moitra is a viral sensation, right? But she is not a viral sensation because she is this typical, woman who's extremely well educated, beautiful looking, she's verbose, she's extremely well versed about what she's talking. But the fact of the matter remains that she's earning her laurels in a system where there is another politician heading that party. She's also, so Mamta Banerjee will never see her screaming at TV debates because she's too high profile for that. But I'm just saying she is the only stiff opposition for BJP all over the country. I mean, who's standing in front of Modi and Shah's chariot today? I don't believe whose politics.
But mostly she speaks in English, so her audience is very less. In India, you need to
and Bengali.
speak
Yeah.
Bengali or Hindi or regional language, because then she'll only get very educated audiences like us. Because I just feel that we come from a little privileged class of people who are educated or who understand. But I also feel that in India, like what has happened is there's a change of narrative in these last 5-10 years from people like who got certain education and went about their business a certain way, to a little bit of right-wing thing coming. People like the same people who used to vote for Congress now are voting for BJP. They have their own thoughts over it, that why do they do that. And now we who have carried a certain thought in our minds or narratives in our mind, we're saying, oh, that person is not so educated, that's why he's doing it. But that's not the case. I mean, he may be having a reason to, like everybody in India has a reason to vote for whoever they, even if it is caste. But the point being that she has a limited audience. I can understand her, admire her, you can understand her and admire her, but not everybody can do that. Like people don't understand.
Before we conclude, I have one or two questions I want to ask all of you. So Shreya, according to you, which is your favorite Indian political film? And in one sentence, tell us why.
This is not a very, I have not watched so many films.
You are a film. You should
I have not watched so many films.
But still, tell us about a relatively nice Indian political film which you really thought was, done up properly, was decent writing. And you said, okay, it somehow shows the hypocrisies of our times or has some nuance or somewhere there's a bit decent.
I mean, more than a political, what are the options I have? I mean, from Bollywood, I'm sorry, I've not watched many South Indian films also, but I prefer them over a lot of Bollywood films. But if you see that the top films, which a lot of people have seen, are films like Sarkar or Rajniti and all these films. There was one film of Anil Kapoor in which he is a common man. He comes to power for a day, and then that's made in literally every language. I think there was some Hollywood film. Yeah, Nayak.
Why do you like Nayak?
No, I'm just saying that the common man, see, even if I'm educated or whatever, in our minds, we feel that the politician who comes to power, once he's coming to power, there's so much of power centered on one person that he just forgets that there's so many aspirations associated with him. So it's not that I like the film. I like the concept that okay, fine, if a common man thinks that nothing, that politicians are not doing anything, then he comes to power and he tries to do something and change it. I like that thing, but though it is fantastical idea, not at all realistic, but it is something which appeals to a common person. When it comes to Rajniti or all these Sarkar, these are very dramatic films, which are about the maneuverings of what happens in political families to keep being in power, and a lot of glamour, sex, people loving somebody else, marrying somebody else just for politics and money and everything. So those kind of stories are not ideological in nature, and I like to pick up an idea, and I want it to be like an idea that appeals. So these are just stories, they can be written anywhere, they can be made anywhere, same films anywhere, but as an idea, that is an appealing idea.
Anshuman, your favorite Indian political film and why?
I think I have a 2 or 3. For sheer sarcasm, a very old film of the 70s, Kissa Kursi Ka, which even today, if you pick up that movie and certain scenes in that movie, you could think they're talking about today, and it was 40 years ago. And then I think Gulal, which came out in 2009-10.
Gulal is one of my favorite films. Sorry to say.
Interesting portrayal of politics. Very real, I think. Nuanced also, student politics, caste politics, class politics. It had a good mix. It was believable, set up in Rajasthan, and so it was. I would say it would be my pick as a good political movie.
MK sir, your favorite?
I refuse to answer this question. I don't like any of them. And I'll say this. I'll tell you what. What they should do is, to examine politics at the lowest level, panchayat level or some such thing, right? It seems to be that everybody wants to talk about national level. Why national level? We don't know what is happening at the national level. A person who's living in a village has some sense of what is the local politics going on there, right? How people get elected, what is the thing, who are the people, what are the jatis, that kind of thing. Why not do that? I don't know why everybody wants to jump to the national level because it's so bloody glamorous, I mean, frankly, I can't feel happy about any of the portrayals of politics.
Okay? I have.
Welcome to Sajjanpur. Welcome to Sajjanpur was Shyam Benegal's film, which he made nice. on a small village. And it
local
was and it was entertaining, but it didn't do well because you know how it is. But it was something on
my favorite political film in last 2-3 years, which I've seen many times, is Newton.
Newton. But when you said politics, it didn't enter my. Newton is like not.
This is not fair. It's not political in the same sense.
It's not a political in the same sense. Then I will say, he said Gulal. I didn't find it.
I'll tell you about it. It's about.
This is about the portrayal of politics. I think it's about the portrayal of politics.
It's right.
It talks about the infrastructure paraphernalia of politics.
It's not really a political film in that sense.
After effects of politics.
Like Gulal also, I felt it was student kind of a film, but you were right, it was politics.
I don't know what Gulal, what is that party? What are those people? I mean, I really couldn't figure that out at all.
I had a crush over that guy Ransa.
Okay.
He comes, so he basically, you remember there's a scene in which he comes in his chaddi and all, and he looked like a farmer from Bihar, and I was like, oh my God. And that's why I liked him.
But I think, just to come back to the level, I mean, I'm just talking about now, writers have gone, in these areas of smaller town politics or micro issues of a cog in the
amazing film, yes.
Sort of situation. And they are writing stuff. So there is this movie which I haven't seen of Richa Chadda called Madam Chief Minister, which is
it's not come out.
Apparently, they are saying it's based on Behan Mayawati, but we really don't know.
I like Delhi Crime very much. Delhi Crime was superlative.
Delhi Crime.
Very good. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you got a sense of India, you got a sense of what is happening. You got a pretty plausible way of how things run, how the police run, how various things run. In fact, in my opinion, it's probably the best Indian TV series ever that I've ever seen. It's not actually Indian, it's the Canadian.
You're right.
Yeah. It was excellent.
I haven't watched it.
You must watch.
You should watch it. It's very good.
I need to catch up on so much.
Good. Okay, guys, this has been a very enlightening session on this entire matter of Indian politicians and films, and we briefly spoke about Tandav. And I think the general perception is that Indian politicians are portrayed for a variety of reasons the way they are portrayed, right from commerce to stardom to lack of other avenues they should be portrayed. And there is also the reason that now it is evolving. The whole process is evolving. We are seeing these films like Newton, like Welcome to Sajanpur. We are looking at movies like Madam Chief Minister, and this entire process is evolving. So I think there is no one answer why Indian politicians are portrayed the way they are. There are a variety of reasons why they are portrayed like that. And today we had a very interesting discussion from Shreya Narayan, actress and thinker, and Anshuman Jain, our friend, movie producer and movie watcher. And very, very thankful to Mr. M.K. Raghavendra from Bangalore, our film scholar. And this has been a great and very interesting discussion. This is Rahul, your filmy Bania. And this is it for this episode.